Welcome back, history enthusiasts. Today we're jumping right into a brand new explainer, unearthing the massive archaeological and cultural footprint of Alexander the Great. We're going to rigorously examine the source material to see how his campaigns triggered this literal collision of East and West. Because as you'll see, his most enduring impact wasn't actually the sheer amount of territory he conquered, but the radical, paradigm-shifting ideas he left in his wake.
So let's dive into a seemingly impossible historical paradox. How exactly did a Macedonian king influence Buddhist art? I mean, at first glance, that sounds geographically and chronologically impossible, right? But to answer this fascinating question, we've got to look way beyond the blood-soaked battlefields of antiquity. We have to meticulously trace the centuries-long cultural shockwaves he generated across the globe.
Section 1. The Brief, Blazing Conquest. To really wrap our heads around the raw scale of his military expedition, we have to grasp the genuinely staggering pacing of his life. He assumes the Macedonian throne in 336 BC, and by 323 BC, he's dead in Babylon. In just a little over a single decade, this young king, who, remember, was tutored by Aristotle himself and supposedly slept with a copy of Homer's Iliad under his pillow, well, he remained completely undefeated in battle. He sweeps across the vast Persian Empire, down into Egypt, and all the way to the treacherous terrain of India. Marching an army of that size across such hostile geography without modern logistics, it's an unprecedented marvel.
5,200,000. That's how many square kilometers of empire he left behind at his death. It's an absolutely massive geographic canvas. But it came with a fatal flaw. Alexander died suddenly at just 32 without securing a clear line of succession. And boom, those 5 million square kilometers are instantly plunged into a chaotic global power vacuum. It set the stage for a brutal fracturing of the empire that, ironically enough, actually ensured his cultural legacy survived.
Section 2. The Dawn of Hellenization.
Now, as historians, our big question is, what happened to that massive territory over the next 300 years under the rule of his warring generals, the Diadochi? Well, it brings us to Hellenization. It's a term coined by 19th century German historian Johann Gustav Droysen to denote the spread of Greek language, culture, and population into the former Persian Empire. Under the Diadochi, this cultural fusion really accelerated. It aimed to hybridize the East and the West, basically homogenizing wildly diverse populations into a distinct Hellenistic period. And this era of ancient globalization forever altered human civilization.
Section 3. Forging a Global Language.
The most immediate artifact of this era is the absolute civic transformation of the ancient world. Through the strategic founding of over 20 new cities, most famously Alexandria and Egypt, essential Athenian civic ideals were exported across the East. We're talking classical town planning, Greek-style education systems, local democratic government structures, and classical Greek art forms. Institutions like gymnasiums and outdoor amphitheaters became these powerful engines of culture, ensuring Greek ideals took root thousands of miles away from the Mediterranean. But here's the thing. You can't maintain a shared, sprawling culture without a unified voice. Because Alexander's massive army was made up of men from all over Greece, their close daily association birthed a new standardized dialect, Koine Greek. This literally became the new lingua franca of the ancient world. It spread so effectively that it bridged the gap between merchants, scholars, and politicians from Egypt all the way to India. It allowed complex philosophies to travel seamlessly across borders. I mean, it was so deeply pervasive that the New Testament was eventually written entirely in Koine Greek.
Section 4. East meets West, Greco-Buddhism.
Let's zoom in on this fascinating cross-pollination along the ancient Silk Road trade routes, specifically within the Greco-Bactrian and Indo-Greek kingdoms. Here we encounter syncretism, the amalgamation of different religions, cultures, or schools of thought. Importantly, Hellenization was rarely forced at sword point after the initial conquests. It was actually a highly organic blending. Hellenistic traditions hybridized beautifully with ancient Iranian and early Buddhist cultures. Historical sources reveal an incredible parallel when we look at the religious exchange here. Take the concept of Mahayana bodhisattvas. They are remarkably reminiscent of ancient Greek divine heroes. For instance, the visual and mythological traits of the Greek hero Heracles, the club, the muscular physique, were actually adapted into the Buddhist figure of Vajrapani, the fierce protector of the Buddha. We also see shared practices like burning incense, which points to a deep two-way philosophical translation. It's like a giant puzzle coming together.
And this syncretism perfectly answers our initial paradox about Buddhist art. The very first figurative portrayals of the Buddha actually emerged from the Gandhara region during this period, and they are modeled remarkably like classical Greek statues of Apollo. You have these serene Buddhist figures wearing heavily folded Greek-style togas. We even have records of Indo-Greek kings like Menander I actively debating Buddhist philosophy and eventually converting. It's a staggering visual and literary testament to Alexander's reach.
Section 5. Astronomy and Architecture Syncretism. This blending wasn't just isolated to religion. Hellenization triggered a massive paradigm shift in science, too. In astronomy, the Greek introduction of a spherical Earth eventually supplanted long-standing regional beliefs, like the traditional Indian cosmology that viewed the world as a flat disk around Mount Meru. The influx of Hellenistic science changed this completely. Archaeologists in modern-day Afghanistan have even dug up functioning Greek astronomical instruments from the 3rd century BC.
We also see a stunning transformation in the architecture. Look at the Hellenistic influence on Indian architecture. You've got stable classical Greek elements suddenly appearing in 3rd century BC Pakistan and India. The Ionic order shows up at the Jandalyal temple near Taxila. Further east, you find Ionic-influenced Pataliputra capitals in India. Most strikingly, the region developed its own unique Indo-Corinthian capitals in the art of Gandhara. It's literal, structural proof of a unified ancient world.
Section 6. Echoes in Modern Civilization. So, what is the ultimate butterfly effect of this era? Well, first, the diffusion of Greek culture laid the absolute precondition for Roman expansion into West Asia and North Africa. The Romans essentially paved over a world already united by Greek thought. Second, this formed the basis and predominant language of the Byzantine Empire until its fall in 1453. And finally, step 3. Through the massive staying power of those empires, this Hellenistic foundation directly developed into the modern Western culture we navigate today.
Because of this, Alexander became a legendary touchstone for almost every ambitious mind that followed him. Consider this incredible quote. Julius Caesar wept on seeing a statue of Alexander, since he'd achieved so little by the same age. From Caesar to Napoleon, future leaders obsessively measured their own historical footprints against Alexander's staggering legacy. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. When you look at those ancient statues of the Buddha draped in Greek robes, or the deeply rooted Hellenistic foundations of modern governance and science, you really have to ask, was Alexander's greatest victory won on the battlefield, or in the unprecedented blending of human cultures he unknowingly catalyzed? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and as always, keep questioning the past.